So, Nikkianajones, tell us about yourself and the subject matter that got you into ancient history. I've got a list of your skills and accreditations, but I'm not interested in those at the minute. I want to hear about your motivations for ancient history. What got you started? What rabbit hole?
Uh, well, but I mean, for me, I did study art history. I've always been into history, and I have always been a like I don't know, I've always been into ruins. Big epiphany was in Peru in 2016 at Sacsayhuaman. I was walking around. I had never heard of it. I didn't even know that was a word. I thought the guy was saying sexy woman. And I was like, what? And they're like, yes, you want to go to sexy woman? And I was like, what is sexy woman? And he's like, big rocks. You like big rocks. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll go to a place called Sexy Woman with Big Rock. And then I got there. I mean, that's how clueless I was. And when I got there, I was like, it just, and I've explained this before. It's somewhere I think, but um, I I almost started crying because there was a pit in my stomach. Like that's when I knew. I was like, "Oh shit, we are lied to like so hard. It isn't even funny." I mean, cuz like nobody had to tell me anything. I didn't have to read anything. I could just be there looking at the damn things. Like I also can hear. I have some like other senses or whatever. I have some weird thing, but like so it's buzzing. The rocks were like completely off the hook buzzing. The whole thing sounded like some giant refrigerator or something.
So
And
you
I
got
was going,
resonance healing off the stone then.
yeah, there's some sort of electricity. There's a sound that comes from like a hum, like a low buzzing hum that comes off the entire site. And it feels so weird. It's so foreign. It's actually uncomfortable when you're in Saxy Woman to me. Like I was just like, ugh, like there's been four places that have done this to me. Actually, Stonehenge was the first place I ever noticed. Like when I was 23, I was like, why are they making noise? Like, why are these stones making noise? Mahabalipuram in India makes a lot of noise. Saxe woman, and it's not like every place. I went all over Peru. I went to Machu Picchu. I did like Ollantaytambo. I did all the major sites. Monterey, or whatever it's called. They didn't make noise. Saxe woman makes a ton of noise, and then Chaco Canyon in New Mexico makes a lot of noise. Those are the four places that I've been to where there's like an actual visceral noise that I can't like. I'm like, whoa, this is weird. Oh, and the Bent Pyramid in Egypt. So I guess there's five. Yeah. So anyway, I am an avid traveler, and so like I just go to see these things, and through the process of that, like in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, I've come across other people who think like there's some black magic weird fuckery going on with all this stuff, and then like have started actually looking into the alternative stuff. That's kind of how I got down the main rabbit hole. But really what made me start seeking more stuff out was physically going and seeing the stones myself and being like, we did not do this. Like this, I don't know who did this or what did this, but whatever they're telling us, like with chisels and that's not the story. Like this was not made by a hammer and a chisel. This is something else went on here. This is crazy. And so that's how I
Yeah.
got started.
One of my favorite sayings, it wasn't done by copper chisels, sticks and stones, now was it? I agree with you there. It's lovely to hear your thoughts on. And what would your favorite ancient site have been to go to that you haven't been to so far? Where's on
I
your radar? What would
I
you love
really
to
want to
do?
go to Lebanon and do the ballback. Um,
Oh, I
tip of
mean,
Jupiter. That would be really high up on my list. I want to. There's some stuff I want to see in Japan really bad. I really want to go. I've never done Turkey. I haven't done Göbekli Tepe or.
I've been 3 times to Turkey. It's a wonderful
Oh,
place.
that's awesome.
And Japan for me as well. Rockship and Masuda would be a must. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
And It's
And
ultimately with the
Madal in
travel that
Indonesia or whatever. I mean, I want to go to Cambodia. I haven't been to that many places. I mean, I've been to a lot, but it's there's still like a lot of the world. I haven't been to Easter Island. I haven't been to Bolivia. There's many more places in the world for me to go do and see. I was meant to go to Malta. That got canceled because of COVID. COVID like ruined everything. I was also going to go to South Africa and see like the stone circles down there. That got postponed or ruined, and so I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening with further stuff. But
you
I
mentioned
mean,
stone circles. Nick, what's your thoughts on stone circles? What's your thoughts on the origins and what they're for? And are you a believer in the druidic? What sort of purposes do you think the stone circles are for?
I, I mean,
Especially South African based, as you mentioned.
I have really out there ideas about like what's really going on. I mean, like I get like weird hits when I go to these places, like intuitively, and I just think, uh, uh like I the more I look into this, I think we're a seeded race. I think there was somebody else here before us. And I'm not even saying it's like aliens like from Alpha Centauri that came down on a, silver saucer. Like I'm not saying that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
they could have been native earthlings as well. But I just think that whatever, and yes, I'm into I know the Younger Dryas stuff and I'm into it too or whatever, but I also, I kind of like giants. I kind of like the idea of, uh, yeah, some other kind of humanoids or human like races that were around before us that were doing something different than us. I'm uneasy with our level of collective amnesia and how we just we just know very little about our past. We really do. And what we do know is very contrived, came down to us from just a few sources, just a few people could read, just a few people could translate. Like that, I don't know. I get bothered in so many levels, in so many ways by everything. And I'm one of those people that has a real hard time truly believing 100% in anything.
I think
So
one
what
of
are
the
the stone
things
circles? I don't know.
we
I think they were functional and I think there was something weird that we don't have. Maybe they were nuclear power stations and we don't even know about that, for back then. Who knows?
indeed, yeah, intriguing to hear your thoughts. And I noticed that interview a vast array of different, let's say, knowledgeable people with different arrays of knowledge. And to hear yours is quite intriguing, especially from an ancient historical point of view, coming and joining our team and seeing your ancient historical knowledge. It's a privilege to have you with us and to interview you. And, with the dolmens and menhirs and things that sprout up alongside the stone circles, we look at star alignment as a feature, and you almost talk about, like we're a different race of people completely, but you don't rule out that it could be a continuation, and you believe Younger Dryas as well, that you said. So could
Yeah.
that have been a continuation of that same said human race beforehand? And we were theoretically looking at a Game of Thrones, as it were, to megafauna and to different hominids and people spanning back to millions of years. It doesn't necessarily have to be green men, but we can't rule that out either, can we? So
Right.
let's put that out there.
I mean, I
So
also think
could
that
telekinesis or something along those
I do
lines be
believe okay,
prevalent?
so here's what my thing with all that. Like, first of all, I always have to keep in mind that what we're looking at now, like if we're looking at like a dolmen or like a menhir or whatever, um I do always tell myself that I'm looking at a skeleton of something that what like we don't have the full picture of what was there when it was built, right? So we don't know how comprehensive this thing was, if like we don't really know. And we don't know if these were just, if there was casing stones on everything that we're looking at, and this is just the actual like framework of stuff. So I think about that a lot, to take that into context. But then I also think about the way that the big stones were used as if it was just like, like wood frames, like 2x4s. Hey, yeah, let's put a giant whatever thing that's bigger than any sky or that any crane we could move with today. Let's use those. Okay, like if you take Ballback for example, then you're thinking to yourself like, this wasn't hard for them to do. Like when you're at Sacsayhuaman, they literally have like paw prints and snakes that are going in. But I mean, there's designs. There's like animals within the stones, like that are placed with big shaping, weird moving stone. Like, I mean, the place is just phenomenal, and had intention to it. You know, everything about it had intention to it. And this was whatever they did. This was not hard for them to do this. So then I think to
Yeah.
myself, like, okay, we're either looking at, I think when you look at fossil records, I'm a big into fossils. I dig a lot. Um, the fauna for, I mean, you can find ginkgo leaves the size of my body, whereas now ginkgo leaves can only, they get about like this big. I do think that the Earth was different at some point, meaning either our atmosphere was different or our magnetic gouge was different, to where maybe stones that were this big didn't weigh that much back then. Maybe it wasn't as physically hard to move them as it is now. I know that's kind of like not so popular, but that could, I mean, maybe that like a dinosaur, if a triceratops or whatever was walking around, it would collapse on its own weight of its head. Like they wouldn't even be able to function in our current gravity. If you took a blue whale out of the water, it would compound on its own skeletal form. Like we have a very, I think we have a different, like a pterodactyl wouldn't be able to fly today. So I feel like we have a different gravitational pull, or something about our physics is different than it was. And I think that that may have even been different 10,000 years ago, like, or 12,000, like around the Younger Dryas time, maybe there really was a pole shift or something. And that changed the way in which the ease at which it is to build. That's just something I think about a lot.
I like the gravity theory, and especially with science as well. I think boundaries are put up with science rather than ones that we can jump. They obviously could jump them far easier than we could. Gravity was easily workable and so on. So I agree with your theory, actually, the reference to science has been different. That's applicable by what we can see with our eyes, isn't it? With stone softening and matter manipulation and so
Mm-hmm.
on. What do you make of the scoop marks and the scrape marks we find at different sites? We speak of stone softening and matter
Yeah.
manipulation. The mainstream suggests that these are for sharpening swords and marble sharpening, where the Indian examples, Egyptian examples simply don't adhere to that. What are your views on that? Are they technological, Nick, or what we're looking at?
Well, like that's okay, like the scrape marks are one of the ones that bother me the most, because I'm just like, sometimes it'll be around a person's face, or like sometimes it almost looks like a deformation, like, or like a, okay, like, okay, maybe there's some intentionality about the placement of the scrape, but then there's definitely examples where that's not true. They're just like, and it's not for stone sharpening. It's like, if it was stone sharpening, why would you need to do it on a building? You could just do like a loose rock somewhere. I mean, like there's like that would be insane that you would be doing it on this nice temple. Like,
Desecrated the temple wouldn't be high on your
it wouldn't
agenda,
be
would it?
that. I mean, I where the one of the theories, and even my favorite theory with nubs, even though I know you're the nub expert and stuff, but like my favorite theory still with nubs is the piezoelectric effect. Like I really think that especially considering that a lot of times we're looking at stone that has some percentage of quartz in it, which does have piezoelectric properties. I think that there was likely, in my own opinion, there was some sort of, these were either facets that something could fix on for light fixtures, or they were the light fixtures themselves, or they were some sort of, I don't know. I'm not, I like it can be debunked in many examples, but it is something that I think intuitively, I think to myself, like, yeah, that it was some sort of functionality, like almost like it was their
Quartz,
street lights.
quartz, quartz content to stone equals piezoelectricity. In fact, we've looked at that on videos with the ancient alternative view, and I agree with that. So yeah, resonance, magnetics, piezoelectrical effects definitely could be prevalent with regards to the nubs. And let's be fair, when we speak about the scrape marks, they're always very near to a set of nubs, aren't they?
Right.
So,
And it could be the positive
plausible
and the
theories
negative
are they
aspect
testing
of
tech? technology that they were using.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I agree with that. And have you got any thoughts on the pyramids themselves, Nick? What would your definition of Giza be? And give us your
I
reasons
don't know if
why
anybody
that's
ever actually
acceptable.
listened to my or watched my thing on Egypt. Like I did a video that was like an hour and a half where I talked about my trip to Egypt, and at the end of that video I talk about.
Well, they should be get across to Nikkianajones's channel,
Yeah,
and you should be
well,
watching this here now, and you should be watching her work on Egypt.
you
So go
should.
and find it. Thank
My
you.
channel's pretty cool. It's pretty good. I got some good people on there. Um anyway, I when I first went up to them, like the yeah, I thousand and whatever percent not tombs. Okay, like these things, I definitely think were functional. For a little bit there, I was into like the Giza power plant kind of theory, but then when I went into I found myself alone in the Great Pyramid in the King Chamber by myself, and I was like, oh, this is cool. What should I do in here? So like no one's in there with me. I'm literally alone and I don't know how much time I have. So I was like, okay. So I jump into the box or the sarcophagus, whatever, the box. And then I'm laying down, I'm like hanging out in the box, and the thought comes to me like I had 2 months before that I had hung out with this shaman like from Colombia, and he had told me a spell, and like and he was saying that like, oh, this is a portal opener, like you can say this spell, it's from the White Brotherhood of something, or I was like whatever. And so I happened to remember the spell, and so then I just started, which now in hindsight this sounds really stupid and like why would you do this there, and like that's the dumbest thing ever, but okay, so I did. I sat there and I got in the pyramid and I started saying the spell that was supposed to open a portal over and over again, and a freaking like smoke figure of like this giant Egyptian with the weird
Wow.
thing from it's like started popping out of the ceiling of the king's chamber, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And so I heard somebody else start coming through the little tunnel, so I stopped saying it, and then it like disappeared and went into it. So then the whole thing I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay, so this is, so then I knew, okay, there's a functionality in terms of this is actually some kind of portal opener to another realm, and or it does something with energy like physically in our it's some kind of, it does something with our bodies physically. I think it's maybe it's a healing chamber slash, like you could go to other dimensions in it. That's what I think really it is, but that's
They
way woo.
suggest
That's way
they
woo, but I'm just telling you,
suggest
there you
that
go.
your body's in tone to, is it a C and an F chord, and that the Giza plateau sort of harmonizes that. So stones, if you were to lie on them and that harmonized through, you would keep a level of harmony to your body, hence health. So yeah, it could well be something
Well, and
along them
even
lines. I
next to
think
the bent pyramid, there is this little, I don't know, it's like a little gazebo thing. It's like it's still stone and ancient, and there is this little thing on the ground where I mean, I took a video, put it on Twitter recently, but it literally looks like you could stick your head in it. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's like it channels the energy from the vent pyramid into this. Like this is where you would lay to get healed, and or maybe astral project or something.
yeah.
I don't know. But so that, like I said, that's way, like nobody in the world is going to believe that, but that's on a personal level, that's what I really think the pyramids kind of are for.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for your
Yeah,
insight
but
on that.
it's okay. I know I'm crazy with that kind of stuff, but I still, it is what it is.
So, with that in mind, Miss Craziness, would you suggest that mentioning shamanic and things like that in your South American exploits, would you be open to ayahuasca and the possibilities of looking into different dimensions? We'll hit that subject. You can
Been
see
there, done
what
that.
your thoughts are.
Yeah, like I've definitely have already done my ayahuasca trips and explored psychedelics. And yeah, I mean, like I think that uh, I don't know. I don't think it's not necessarily for everybody, but it is yeah, I mean, it really does sort of show you the nature of what your consciousness is. And like, yeah, I think it's a very important key element to on some, like what's going on the bigger picture of what reality is.
Well, with that in mind, it goes back to our initial point, and especially with studies of alchemical substances, different sciences,
Hmm.
different ways to look at things. Were we different? I don't mention religion in this comment at all, but if there are control factors that have suppressed specific parts of us mentally that we were unable to use beforehand with different science applications, possibly telekinesis, things along those lines, stone softening, which is applicable. So it happened. So how we did it is another question, gravity and so on and so forth.
Right.
These are obviously things that, you know, people like Graham Hancock like to apply with ayahuasca and shamanic traditions. And I just was intrigued to hear your views on the South American trips that you've done, because I know
Yeah.
it's very spiritual, isn't it, down there as well?
I mean, yeah, I mean, and you don't have to get into that, but I did, and I mean, I just know like you basically you understand a different level of how time works. You start seeing like the thread of energy that connects us all. Um, I think that yeah, I think that the human body and mind and spirit and whatever it is that we are here exactly is way more capable than we are being told.
Absolutely.
If I have to really like step back and look at it, I kind of feel like we were hijacked by a um maybe like a corrupted AI type hive mind intelligence at some point, and it's really repressed us into thinking that we're nothing and that we're not capable of anything. And then so when you get in that vortex and then you have other beings that come underneath you and you raise them to think that way or whatever, we're in like this giant repressed like systematically in the entire world. We're like underneath this big giant black magic fuckery spell. That's kind of what I think is happening. But really, if you can figure out like a way to break out of the control matrix of
I
you,
like the
you know,
Matrix analogy. Yeah.
yeah, but it kind of really is like that, you know, and it's just like you know, we have this huge disempowerment thing of like, oh, we aren't powerful. We don't have control of our own realities. You get a job, you work, you live, you die, you do this, and then like, I mean, when you get past that, you start realizing that like you basically can control like a lot more than you think you control. Maybe we can even control more than that. I do think we are telekinetic or telekinesis. I do think we're telepathy is real. I think all those things are real. I think there are other beings. I think there's I don't know. I'm a Harry Potter person, okay? Like there's a whole other
So
magic
am I.
world.
Who isn't? Who isn't? I mean,
Right.
if you look at it on a serious note, then humankind can only really look very small points of the spectrum. So what lies beyond the spectrums that we don't see? You know, people think, oh well, we can't do that, so that didn't happen. That's fraudulent as an explanation because it's there in front of our eyes. So we were definitely capable of other things.
And even
But
just
going
like
back to
we're taught to discount our dreams are told to us like by conventional reductionist scientists that it's like oh it's just your brain processing the day's event and there's nothing more and we I mean like that a third of our life is spent sleeping and we really don't really know why or what's going on there or
yeah.
we don't, and we just are taught from little babies just to, well, oh yeah, that was just a dream. It was just a dream. This is a little nightmare. Just no night. I don't know. I feel like that's a whole other camp of training that you can do and that you can get good at and that you can live in that and like I don't know. I think our dreams are way more important than we're led to believe. And I think that they're way more real than we're led to believe. And I think that they are a crossover in between realms and I think that you can really learn how to get good with them and do other stuff. But uh, yeah, it's weird because it's kind of like I have these thoughts and I believe they're true, but I'm totally okay with other people thinking they're complete shit. That's cool. That's your prerogative. That's That like I
Yeah.
don't, yeah, we don't all have to agree with about anything
What
on
a
anything.
boring world it would be if we all agreed with everything that everybody said. We'd get
True.
nowhere, would we? Debate is good as long as it's constructive debate over somebody's experience, and you can't ever take experience away, and that's why it's so intriguing talking to you, Nick, especially about your experiences worldwide, and to have heard how knowledgeable you are with other people that you've interviewed. It's very intriguing to hear your thoughts. And I think as a team, it'd be nice for all of us to get out and get our experiences together and really sort of take these sites to pieces. What's your views on traveling with the team and coming out there and getting some more work done, boots on ground, Nick?
Oh, I would love to
Where
do
would you
that.
like to
I
go? What
totally
would you
would love
like
to
to
do that more.
do?
And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also like for example, like I think I would like to do like an actual scientific exhibit where you do things like, I don't know, we look at nubs with black lights. We look at nub like we can measure, like I have an EMF reader. We can like start measuring, are there any pulsations off these? Like what, like does a giant megalithic stone have different places that it gives off different frequencies than others? Like I have giant fishing magnets, like we could start seeing like there are experiments that we could all be doing and really looking at things from a different angle that we're not really. Like I think even just
yeah.
in life, like you go to a place and you just look around and you go like, oh yeah, that's really nice, and they have a little placard and you have to read the little placard and you do that. That's like not the kind of traveler I am. I am like a, wait, is
Neither
the
me,
security guard
neither
watching?
me.
No? Okay, then I'm jumping in this thing and I'm going around here and I'm doing this. And I definitely think we could be doing like cutting slabs of rocks and trying to look at like, okay, what, like, is this got some kind of geopolymer to it, or is this a natural stone? Like, where is the quarry? Like, what's this quarry about? Like, what can we, I mean, I feel like we can go way deeper than we ever have before, and on a
Absolutely
different
agree
level.
with that. I think that's what's so good about having different skill sets, isn't it, within the team as well? We each bring something different to the table. And whilst we're on site, we know we can get a multitude of different things done, which is fantastic. So, yeah, that would be great, Nick, to do that. What about your views, Nick, on dating specific stones? You've mentioned to me in the past that this is possible, and other scientists and people mentioned that it is not. Can you explain to me and the audience how it is applicable to date stones, please?
Yeah, okay. So the currently, they use carbon C14 dating, which is bullshit because it's like you can literally, like, okay, I have a minor in geology, and like I studied, so I did 3 years of geology in college, and I was almost a geologist, and then I decided I don't like the geologists, they were boring. And so then I, anyway, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so like but I love my rocks, like, and I am big into like, so I'm not like somebody who doesn't know anything about rocks, okay? All right. So, but yeah, anyway, even though still I will admit that there's so much more to learn and to know. So when you see a dead seal on the beach, right? Like you can go up to it, you can take a sampling of its bones, and it can with C14, like I mean, and then sometimes they've gotten better or whatever, but there was a point in time in which that would look like it could be anywhere from they just died yesterday to 200,000 years ago. So you're like going like, what the, that's like not even, you can't even use that. That's longer than human existence going around. But it becomes really, really handy when you're trying to date a dinosaur or something like that, because a 200,000 year margin of error is not that much when you're talking about millions of years. And then it gets even weirder when they start dating the Earth and they're saying stuff like, oh, well, it's anywhere between 4.2 to 4.6 billion years old. I'm like, a 400 million year error, margin of error, 400 million. That's, you guys don't know shit. Like it's just like it's almost like, yeah, so the dating stuff, they have this uranium dating where they can take like, okay, if the outside of the rock like sun is shown on it and like whatever, it has cosmic radiation dating that they can look at. Whereas if you break it open now, there's a new, like, this would have not been exposed. Like the inside of this rock would not have been exposed, just the outside. So whenever it's broken, apparently they can like look at the dating of it, but that's only if it's actually exposed to the elements. And even that has a lot of so that's a new kind of dating that might be good. They don't really use it that much. It's apparently really expensive. There's I've tried to look further into that. It's not a big thing. So yeah, most of the dating on everything, I think, is conjecture, and I think it's bullshit. And the further I've gotten down the deep in the rabbit hole, I've just thrown it out. I'm just like, you might as well just not even look at people's dates of sites
Well,
anymore.
I think as well, you've got to look at a lot of the carbon dating that these sites have had is things within the actual stone, like bags and things like that, which is not conducive to when the stone that it was in
See, that's the thing,
was
is like a lot of times it'll
dated.
be like, oh, there was
You
a
know,
heart.
where's the blood content on all these buildings? Yeah,
Yeah, they'll be
yeah.
like, there was a heart. I'm
And
like, so you're saying that somebody
the
could not have had a fire
carbon,
after the building was built? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I hear what you're saying,
yeah.
but
It's kind of frustrating on that level, yeah. Carbon dating actually works to where people have done it and it's been futuristic in the future. So how would you have something that was made in the future? You know, it's that far out. So it was nice to actually read that there was different methods of dating stone that we could use that is feasible for some of these sites. I.e., you know, the casing stones are not the original pyramids. The internal workings are, so they'd be very, very difficult to date. But the external stones have been in condition for a long time, so maybe specific stones could be dated externally and give us a bit better knowledge from the pyramids themselves and external pyramids and so on and so forth that have been exposed to sunlight. You know, maybe the Sphinx and the bedrock on the Sphinx, not the head, of course, but the Sphinx itself could be tested for that, but you never know. So yourself, Nick, with it's possible to date the uranium atoms yet. Precision stone bowls. Are you on about like all precision stone bowls, or are you on about the Magna Fuente bowl, or what era bowls are we talking of? And are these hallmarks within the bowls and the pottery? What's your fascination with the bowls?
oh, the ball, like the balls from like Costa Rica, or which balls?
It says stone bowls. Are we on about bulls or bowls or yeah? I mean, it says precision stone bowls, thousands of them, very hard stone with complicated surfaces that
Oh
can't be
yeah,
replicated
you have
today.
like andesite. You have some of these like on the Mohs scale, it's, like a one is like you could scrape it with your fingernail, right? And then
I
a
know
10 is
those.
like a diamond, and a diamond is the hardest stone that we have in the world, right?
Yeah,
So you have like this you have types of stones that they've made bowls and stuff with, and like these giant spheres that are andesolite, which is basically like a 9 on the Mohs scale, and they're perfect, like literally like factory made perfect precision all the way, like even around, like it was thrown on a wheel by a machine. um and they're just kind of like, yep, look at those, aren't
I
those
know the
nice
exact
artistry,
ones.
haha.
I know the exact ones that you're on about. And Dave and I speak in teams sometimes, and with Josh about growth of stone aspects where you could add specifics, and you add growth of stone. And these little balls that you found were left in mounds for the next builder to come across and see which styling that they wanted next. How they engineered them remains to be seen. I'm not 100% sure of that either, but yeah, they're very, very intricate, aren't they? These balls. I've seen quite
Oh,
a lot
okay,
of them
yeah.
as well.
And then but the little balls, like they're I also think oh yeah, I mean, Yeah, I don't know. I don't 100% know what we're talking about here because I thought you were saying bowls, and I was talking about like those Egyptian bowls that are like andesite. But if you're talking about like the little balls that are within, like you're talking about like the little iron oxide balls that are, like you find those around like arches and like in Utah, and like there's, they have these things called Moki stones, like MOKI, which are also like these little perfect balls that are found. Like the Native Americans found them already, and they say that the only way they could have been made is in the stomach of something big. But then that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like
No.
well, and then I get like that's the thing is like I really like Bruce Fenton's work on the tektites and about okay, so tektites are supposedly like when a meteorite or an asteroid hits the ground, it's the debris that the like when the impact hits the sand, like the sand would get so hot at that moment that it would melt and it would become glass, right? So but then you have like this desert tektite glass all over. Moldavite is a type of tektite. You have it in Australia. You have them all over the world, right? But then you also have them in the ocean. And then I'm kind of going like when you do core samples of like the bottom ocean, and then I'm going like, wait, what? So you're saying that a meteorite like came and then hit inside? If it hit in the ocean, it wouldn't have created a tektite. It would have been too cooled down by the time it hit that to produce that much amount of like molten glass. Like so something else was going on, and that's why like Bruce Fenton says that that could actually have been like well he says he thinks that that was like evidence of like some sort of like crystalline ship that was blown up in air that came down, and like you're finding pieces of the ship kind of thing. But anyway, I do think that there are some anomalies within geological things that we're looking at that you kind of have to go like, wait, how is this actually formed? Like what is this? Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
weird. Like let's talk about this. There's also I also think like there's petrified sand dunes. Like that had to have like how are you going to petrify sand dunes? That's like that had to have been a solar flash or some kind of that's oh, so anyway, but that's I think there was an old ancient when I talk about like some of these old these like perfect like stones and things that they find, I think we can basically say that we might be looking at like an old nuclear war. Like there was some old kind of maybe there really was an Atlantean war that was the Younger Dryas instead of it being a natural comet. Maybe it was some natural or some homemade Earth nukes. I don't know. Maybe that's what really went down.
Well, you've got to mention the word now in that last sentence, so I'm going to ask it, Nick. You mentioned Atlantis. So
Yeah.
was Atlantis the main engineering hub? Where was Atlantis? What are your theories on Atlantis? You have to
Atlantis.
tell me
Okay,
now. So
so
the
yeah,
audience is
Atlantis.
intrigued. You have the floor. Tell us your
Okay, yeah. So what
theories.
do I think about Atlantis? Like I okay. I think Atlantis is when I say Atlantis, I don't necessarily mean like the actual capital city of Atlantis in the old advanced civilization. I mean a pre-diluvian like civilization that was globally like I think that when I say Atlantis, I kind of mean like the globalized world that existed before whatever happened in the Younger Dryas. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that's kind of like more and you do have to define that because people are very specific about like, you know, no, it was this, it was, and I think my favorite place for it is actually Doggerland. Like I know the recut structure, this or that, whatever, like Salisbury, whatever people think it was, Sea of Gibraltar. Like I'm like meh. I think it was Doggerland. That if we're talking about a place that actually sunk at that time period, that you know whatever. But okay, I think when I talk about Atlantis, I'm more talking about even in some kind of way. I'm talking about like the civilization that was responsible for building some of these megalithic sites all over, and then is no more in the same way. And I think they may not be.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think they may not be anymore because I think they had a nuke or they had a giant war and destroyed each other, and we're like the
It
peons
sort
that
of
survived.
brings credence to another place that you mentioned on your travels in India, that the Vamana Wars and so on and so
Yep.
forth, very well documented. It isn't like it wasn't seen and documented as well, that there was a war in the skies and very advanced, let's say, flying machines at that point in time, which constitute the flight of stone, let's be honest with you. The Vamanas are very prevalent, aren't they, around, well, what looks like Vamanas all over India.
Right.
My favourite examples are around Tamil Nadu, which are covered in nubs. I had to get that out there, Nick. I had to get that out there, the nubs. But yeah, the evidence does suggest some kind of advanced war pre-cataclysm, whether it be a comet that hit or whether it be an Atlantean war faction
Absolutely. Yeah.
with
Well, and
another
that's
area
also what
remains
I
to be
think.
seen.
I think when you think about uh I when you think about the amount of, that's why I think I'm interested in UFOs still, because I've seen a couple in real life, but then also in addition to that, like they are just so prevalently seen in other things, and I don't think that that's where I don't think we're looking at like, oh, somebody from way off in a far off galaxy is coming to visit us. I'm like, these things are clearly here. Like, and some people are seeing them, right? So even as much as for the governments to admit that there are being seen, okay? And I think that we're talking about a breakaway civilization. So I think whoever was the Atlanteans, if you want to call them that, like the people who were advanced builders before the Younger Dryas, we'll just say it like that. Whoever those people were,
Yeah.
I don't think they completely don't exist anymore, and I don't think they're completely us. I think that they went either other dimensionally, like they can hide other dimensionally, or they're inside mountains, they're in Antarctica, they're underneath the ocean, they're somewhere. They exist somewhere. They come out in these things. Um, I don't know what their function is or whatever, but that's why I believe in a breakaway civilization. And I think the breakaway civilization is actually kind of tied to the megaliths in the ancient history. So there you go.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
cool.
Wow. How to leave a research, you're completely tongue-tied. There you go, you did it. But no, on a serious note, look at all theories, they're all on the table. And I watch a channel called Mars Anomalies, and he in depth looks at NASA's pictures and uses different paint applications to bring out things that have been hidden on there, and some of the right angles, the lozenges, the different things that this man finds are quite phenomenal. And it does open the mind to that what actually did go on there, and that's without thinking about us here. It's completely different. It enables me to look at things from a different perspective. When you look at ancient history, the planetary alignments are completely different, aren't they? You know, Venus was very prevalent. Pre-Younger Dryas, we obviously had an engineering capability that was magnificent because we can see it still all over the world. We obviously survived it because we're sat here speaking about it. How far it went back and the engineering skill that we had still remains to be seen, but it seems like certain subjects become taboo, don't they, with ancient researchers, i.e. the alien subject and the Atlantean
Alien
subject. Why
subjects
are they
taboo,
taboo?
giants are taboo. You know,
Yeah,
any
yeah.
any kind of like the only thing that's not taboo is that we were cavemen for however many, like that's debatable on how many, if you want to say we were cavemen for however many hundreds of thousands of years, and then all of a sudden we, started farming,
Yeah.
and then, oh, Gobekli Tepe pops up, and then, oh, then the ancient Egyptians are just super
Yeah.
advanced all of a sudden, and then, blah blah blah. We got some
Yeah.
crusades, some Rome, or we got some Greek people doing some stuff. Then, oh, we had the Romans, and then we had the Dark Ages, and then, the Industrial Revolution, and here you are today with your iPhone. I mean, like that's the story.
You
That's it.
forgot to mention that somebody took a big pot of mud somewhere in between and tipped it over everything as well at certain points. And there's so many different theories that people have out there without really looking at the ancient historical written narratives and also the physical evidence narratives, where it's an honor to meet somebody that knows a lot about both, Nick. and a pleasure to have you with
Yeah,
us
thanks.
on
I
the
mean, I don't know.
communion.
I still, I'm very open minded in terms of like I can be convinced of everything I'm saying shit, or maybe it's not. I mean, like I don't, I'm not, I don't, I reserve the right to change my mind in the future. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
of course. Yeah.
100% like steadfast in what I believe now. These are just like from everything I've been looking at. This is kind of like where I'm sitting in my feelings about how I think things are being chronologically put in place. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's like this is where it's being categorized right now in my brain.
I think the DNA evidence helps with the timeline. And when you look at DNA evidence to what hominids are actually on the planet, how you distinguish them as a researcher or a human being
Okay, I learned
along that
something really
timeline?
interesting about DNA recently. Okay, so apparently there's something to that seven generation thing. Okay, so like I always think in my brain I had this vision of like I am the combination of everything that's ever come before me, like everything that's come before me, and then like I'm the bottom of the pyramid. Here I am, and then like I'm have a little bit of everything that's ever made me. Well, that's not actually how it works. Like you are a vessel that can only hold so much, so it's more like a lozenge, in that like okay, let me, I got a piece of paper here. So, like, let's say you are here, and then you're here, okay, a little dot here, and then you have your parents, and then you go, you got your four grandparents, and you got your 16 great grandparents, and blah, 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 so on, so forth, so on. It doesn't keep going on like a giant pyramid, okay? What happens at some point after after seven, you are guaranteed seven generations back to have at least part of every one of those people's DNA within you. But once it gets to 10 generations back, you only have 50% chance of having each one of those people have some piece of their DNA passed on to you. And it gets less and less the further on it gets back. So really what the graph of your DNA sequencing ends up looking like, and I don't know if this is really going to translate well on here, but what this is you. This is like the seven generations ago where you had 100%, like we're guaranteed to have some of them, and then it gets less and less and less the further it goes away. So if you can see that visualization, that makes me think like there are that makes a little bit more sense in terms of how you could totally lose Denisovan qualities. You could totally lose whatever, like Neanderthal qualities and stuff
Or
as
of
time goes
inertia,
on.
gravity, and so on.
Oh,
Yeah,
gravity.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
definitely.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that we had like huge breakaways where they we aren't of them. It could literally just mean that the traits in which that they were are no longer desirable for the thing that we are in our environment anymore. And so we are, you really are only the combination of the seven generations before you. And other than that, it's like Bob's your uncle, what other traits you get. Now, of course, everything you got had to come from somebody before at some point. So
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, when I think about that, that put a whole nother spin in my perspective of DNA. And it kind of like helped me kind of go like I always had a hard time putting together these weird anomalies of all these hominids that have come and gone, and there looks like there could have been some interbreeding, and then we stopped interbreeding with them, or do we? I don't know. I did one of those DNA tests, and I'm like 4% Neanderthal, so uh, that's apparently pretty high.
Says
Um,
it says it all, and it is high. Can have up to 5% in you, which suggests of a race that went back to almost a million years, at minimum 750,000 years, led us to the Gravitian Empire, which is a minimum of 30,000 years. It's a long, long, long time when you consider the Roman Empire was 1700 years. The Gravitian Empire was absolutely massive. So, with that in mind, they managed to maintain conditional training all over the world. They spread everywhere. And they were obviously dispersal DNA. They were obviously mixing DNAs. And they did what's called a meeting point every 2,300 years to go across the new road to different cave systems and monitor the stars. And Neanderthal were quite prevalent in Spain because it was very warm. and they met and swapped families. So, say for argument's sake, you had a child and I took them to my family and I showed them the way of life here, and then they came back to you and shared those secrets. Do you understand what I mean? I
Yeah.
say secrets, it's more just a way of life. So, star clusters, they didn't just spend all the days doing that. They like knew how to look after teeth, they knew how to use painkillers, they knew how to use the plants more,
And why do you think we don't care about
adequately than
stars
what
anymore?
we did. I just think, like, similarly to what we spoke about earlier on, in my own opinion, I think that part of us is suppressed. I think our ancients were studying not just a prediction system for maybe comets or times or whatever. I think that they were prevalent in the opposite way of thinking of what we talked about before. So, a functional aspect into, excuse me, stone softening matter manipulations, alchemical remedy
Yeah,
that
I
was
think so too.
attuned to the body. I think specific star clusters. And if you look at the alchemical books, if you look, they all go back to Norway, all date back to Norway. They've all got planetary alignments with lozenges, with amounts of dots. Funny you should mention 7. You get quite a lot of that. 9, which referred to the planetary alignments as well back then. So it does suggest that, and this is, I don't understand how they were written. Maybe somebody else was better. I'm taking it off the hallmarks that I see. But everything seems to revolve around the stars and the planets for our ancients. I don't think it does for us anymore. I think it's more of a hobby, a fascination. Pardon me, like how far can we go? I think it was very relevant for our ancients because they required specific alignments for certain aspects of their alchemy to work. And then it was simple to them. Like you said, they understood it in a different way. They may have understood the equation of gravity better than us, how to turn it off and on. We can't explain it now. We don't know what it is. The mathematical equation is just a simple way to tell you we don't know what we're talking about. We don't understand gravity, not anymore. Maybe it was different applications back then, Nick, like you suggested before. But
Well,
the
I mean,
planets,
on
excuse me.
our planet right now, you have like you have like a lot of like you have um aborigines in Australia that apparently can like travel like almost like time travel, but they can like they call them some kind of walkers where they can go to a city before a traveling group. Like this was even like documented in like the when they were pioneering it like in the 1800s. Like they would have like a fella, what I can't remember what they would call him, but they could go scout out before because they could do some sort of almost like they could travel like almost like by location or something. You have Tibetans who are said to be able to levitate. Like you have all like these like when I was in Peru, like
Shaolin as well. And
Shaolin
you've
monks, they were supposed to
and
be
if
able to do
you,
all kinds
I
of stuff.
mean, the crazy thing about that is these people that you're talking about. If you imagine the map, and you've got India, as you travel up and you get towards the Himalayas,
Mhm.
and you go across, you've got Tibet, Shaolin, then you've got China, you've got the where the Tarim Basin is. Then it cuts across to Russia, where you've got all the megaliths and monoliths and everything that LAH was finding back in ancient times would have been connectable. Have a guess where to? Alaska, in North America. And I'm telling you now, that was all travelable. And that's why I don't know, the war faction that you talked about that could possibly have happened.
Yeah.
A lot of Canada was taken away, a lot of megalithic Canada was sank. And if it was travelable, we've got to argue that we know this as well. The Amazon was split into 4 planted areas.
Yep,
This
with
was
Terra Preta.
done
That's
on
another thing that
purpose.
really is I mean, Terra Preta is engineered soil that is
Absolutely. And
insane.
that
And that's in
soil,
Russia too. You can find it in Australia, you can find it in South Africa.
yeah,
It's like that's Terra Preta is a huge thing that you need to bring into the mix of all that's going on. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like I definitely think we were we were globalized, and I'm agreeing that like yeah, like we had abilities that we have paralyzed in ourselves, and
Yeah,
I wonder what
definitely
that's
agree with
about.
that.
And when I was in Colombia, like I was hanging out with what are the name of that tribe? Not Anana. No, it's a anyway, I forget it right now, but that's where they like send their kids till they're, I don't know, from the time they're like 2 or 3 till they're in puberty age. They raised in a black cave without any light, so that they learn how to see with their third eye before they see with their two eyes.
I
And
remember you telling me that. I remember us speaking about this, and you're completely right. Yeah,
yeah,
and there's like obviously other cultures as well, Nick, like India, where the children play around with cobra snakes and grab them, and people think, why would they do that? Why on earth is this going on? Well, snakes and things and animals that we see as hallmarks on buildings from Oceania all the way across to India,
hmm
they must have been relevant to specific ancient cultures to literally revere them as gods and goddesses and so on and so forth. But why is the question to that? Like their venoms have got to have been used for something like weaponry through the Romans. Yes, fair enough. But what about if there was like a human hibernation where snake venom synthesis and things like that were used to get you through periods of cataclysm or ice age or things like that? What's your thoughts on that sort of avenue of research, Nick?
Oh, I haven't looked too much into that, but that sounds amazing. That's like pretty interesting, and I do think that there's some legs to it. Um,
That's my theory, though. That's
What's
my
a
own
good theory? I like
theory.
it. You need to go
I
further
was just
into it.
running it past you.
I mean, like
Well, I kind of have. I think, with the snake venom, if a snake bites you, your skin turns blue. And when we look at the blue class warriors, the blue class Hindu
all the blue
gods, and
skins.
so on, I look
Yeah.
at why blue, and I look at this snake venom synthesis and so on as maybe a physical evidence way of how it could have happened. But you, of course, do get blue class people. I'm sure you mentioned to me about somebody that was blue over in America as well,
Yeah,
and
they have the blue
what condition
Kentucky
it was. I'm sure
people.
you've
I mean,
used.
and then I talked about in South America. Uh, I actually did an expedition to. It was kind of like looking for the city of gold or whatever, but it was this place called Manoa, and the story was like it was the same shaman that gave me the spell that like started working for me in the Great Pyramid. So I decided like, oh, maybe he's not completely full of crap. So I decided to go with him to this expedition in South America because he was talking about how he had met an Atlantean who was a 12-foot tall blue woman with blue skin, and she had 6 fingers and 6 toes, and she was blue skin, had all these tattoos all over her, and that she took him into a breakaway portal or breakaway city that they currently live in. And he said there was UFOs flying all around it, and she had taken like this Shaolin monk came to her from Agartha area or whatever. He came to her. He was invited. He went there, and the shaman guy was just the guide to take him from whatever the
Wow.
airport to the place, and the monk stayed there, and he was like, okay, well, I would feel better if the monk would tell me that himself. And so that's why he was allowed to go in, because he had to like hear it from the horse's mouth, like, yeah, I'm deuces, I'm staying here forever, later, I'm not coming back. um anyway, that whole story, when I heard that story, I was like, that is just such crazy town I'm going. And so
As soon as you mentioned blue, it rang true to me, and I was like, "Oh wow, I can't believe he's seen that." Because that rings true to me with the blue class that I study. And to you, it seems crazy, but to me, it doesn't. It actually seems like a true vision of a real engineer that I actually follow as part of my research. So it was strange how that fitted
mm,
in when you said that to me and thought it was crazy, but I ultimately don't. I think it's magical.
well, his
I
book
think
is
it's
only in
absolutely
Spanish, but
brilliant.
I have a friend who's translating it into English right now. So as soon as he's done with it, I'll send
Wow.
it to you, because like I got to read like the translation part like while he was working on it, and that's what made me decide to go do that. That's where I was when Corona hit. like when the coronavirus, like I was in the middle of the Amazon, like nobody was able to get a hold of me.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Like, you know, and my siblings were like freaking out because they're like, she's gonna get stuck in South America. Like, she's not gonna be able. And I literally got the last flight back to America before they closed the borders. Um, so yeah, like, it's a good thing I finally turned on my phone. Uh, but yeah,
wow, wow.
so that was like my
So,
last big adventure before all this crap happened. Um, but yeah, so like, and like I have told people, and this is another thing, people are like, Nikki's crazy. Maybe it was just a horse with a horn, but when I was where the blue lady was supposed to be, I didn't see the blue lady, but I did see a horse with a horn, and it did touch me, and I was looking right at it, and I was with two other people, and we were both all looking at it, going like, is that uh unicorn? Because kind of
wow,
looks like a unicorn. So
wow.
I don't know. I mean, either that or there's a horse that has a weird deformity in the middle of the Amazon. Yeah.
Or was you eating
No,
mushrooms in the
we were
Amazon?
not.
You
We were not on any
completely.
psychedelics at that. Like late, like later, I took some, but not that. Like that time, no. It was that was 100% sober. That was just like water and quinoa. So, yeah, anyway, like that just makes me think that like what the world is not what we think it is. It really isn't. And if you really do think that it's if you want to have an adventurous, amazing life, it's totally possible. It really is. You have to like you just have to like set your mind to go do it and go see it and go explore. You have to get out there and explore because like you're not going to find like you when you are actually in person at places, it is you know, it's like if you watch somebody having sex online versus actually having sex. It's just not the same thing. You got to actually do the thing for real. You know, it's like it's not the same. Just you know, looking at it,
What a
watching at it.
great analogy. I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that.
You got to get your
Fantastic.
hands dirty sometimes. You know, you got to go to some of these
I
places,
think
do these things.
I think when you get on site and you get this shiver about being there and you can feel the history, that you can feel the amount of culture and civilization that's walked through it. You can feel it in the air, can't you? And as a researcher, as somebody who loves exploring and traveling myself, it just makes me tick. I love that.
Yeah,
And the
I love it
feeling
too.
when you know you're going on your next trip is just, it's fulfilling, isn't it? And I remember a friend of mine that he's actually a PhD temple owner in India, you know, Akil. He messages us on Twitter and so on. He said to me something very special. When you're on site, touch the stones, touch the stones. You'll get what you need from touching the stones. And I never thought that possible until when I was on site. I was on a Roman site in Great Britain called Hormond Abbey, and the first nub in Great Britain was found there. And I touched that nub, and do you know what, Nick? On that site, it's almost like you could feel each and every individual civilization walking through it as you were walking through it, and I can't explain that unless you've been to an ancient site yourself. It's not something that you can explain
Yeah.
very well. Like as well, you walk across fields in Great Britain where battles have gone on because Great Britain's so small. There's been a lot of war here, and there's been battles over different fields and so on. When you're walking across them, it's like you can hear it going on, and that's crazy. I know I'm
No, that's
ex-services
not
and
crazy at all. I
probably
100% have had the
PTSD.
same experiences and I believe that. And I think it brings it brings a realness to this stuff that you wouldn't get from only being in front of your computer.
Yeah, yeah, agree,
Yeah. And I mean, and
agree.
I think like some people get like what like in the like the, oh well, you know, like it's uh like we not everybody can afford to go do this or not everybody like you have to prioritize some things and I mean I think the other thing is that um everybody no matter where you are in the world you have something cool not that far from where you live you should
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
should definitely
absolutely.
go check out like your whatever is in your country whatever state whatever wherever you're at like there are some really cool things. You just have to like search for it, look at it, go out and see it, and like start thinking about how that fits into your own history. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from.
I know what, with the vast array of different sort of rabbit holes that you've gone down, and how you look at life, and how your theories are transposable. Look, that's got to be the way that, not just you, that's got to be the way that everybody is, because the narrative changes daily. If some other evidence or another jigsaw piece comes, we've all got to be ready to say, we were wrong there, this changes that, now it's this. And I love that part of this journey where I like finding out I'm wrong. I question all the time, am I right, am I right, am I right? I want,
and I love getting new puzzle pieces. It's like, you don't necessarily, that's the thing, is like, you don't necessarily have to be right or wrong with stuff.
Thank you.
This is a lot of fun. Let's
darling, and we'll speak again.
Okay, we'll speak again soon. Okay, cool.